There we go. Are you picking it up? Come on. You say we're here. Do you say we're here? No. I'm checking to see if other people can see this live stream right now. There we go. It's happening. Finally. Woo! That took a bit. That took some work. It was literally just sitting on the loading screen for the longest time. And so it took a bit. I had to refresh some things. It's been a heck of a morning. I'm not sure. The quality of the image looks fine, but this is not my usual camera setup. I have like a webcam that I'd usually use. My other computer broke, so can't use that right now. Was going to do the live stream on my phone, but apparently only certain people, like super fancy, important people, can do live streams on phones. So I didn't do that. And so I ended up trying to do this computer. It's like a really like maybe $200 Chromebook. It's not like, it's like an old one. It's back in the days when people used to put touch screen on the little stickers that came with it, even though the screen is not actually a touch screen, but no one would really care. So that's what this computer is. It would not read my webcam. From what I've seen, it is reading my microphone though. It is picking up on my microphone, which is very nice, which is very useful because this was an expensive microphone and I would appreciate being able to use it. And it's been a heck of a morning. It's been a heck of a morning. But we are all finally here together so we can talk about this crazy book that I read. It is called Warmonger by Monique Singleton. Now, let me start off by saying it's not good. It's not a good book. It's really not. I was actually super interested in it. I made the mistake of, I looked at the comments, but I forgot to look because this book is a prequel to a series. I looked at the comments under this book, which were all okay. But I didn't look at the comments under the actual first book of this series. Under that one, that's where you get the rough comments. But I guess I'm willing to have gone through this experience. I would not suggest anyone else read this book, but I'm willing to have gone through this experience so we can discuss it now. And we're going to turn this into one massive learning experience. To start, let me go over the actual plot of the book, give you a quick summary. So you have this guy. He's actually, I went back this morning and I double checked. He is not named in this book. He is the warmonger person, but he's not given a real name, so we call him Aries Kind Friend. Aries Kind Friend is a god. His job is, he sees how human beings have destroyed and brutalized and abused the earth over years, so he wants to essentially kind of get rid of them with a third world war, and he's going to start this war in France. The plan is, you have this chick, Natalie, who's she's a goody-goody, she's a do-gooder, but her mom and the rest of her family are terrible people, and they don't really like her, but she's still desperate for their, like, affection and approval. So what she does is she's like, hey, her mom's like, hey, we want you to seduce the president of the country so that way he'll lose his job and your brother can be the new president. She doesn't want to do that, but mom doesn't really care. So mom, and again, Natalie is trying so hard to get this approval, so she does it anyway. Aries Kind Friend keeps dressing up as, like, he can, like, shapeshift. That's the thing that's thrown in here. And he was like, he shapeshifts into a priest and is encouraging her to do it. And so Natalie she's like, maybe I can find a way to do this without actually having sex with him, because he is married. His wife is like, he doesn't like his wife because his wife is a lesbian and doesn't like him. He's cheated on his wife with 1,000 other people, so he's also not a good person. And so Natalie ends up working in his office, and he's immediately attracted to her, pursues her for a while, ends up raping her. It's a great time. And so president goes, visits the mom. Mom gives him permission to continue doing these things, and Natalie just hates her life. Then she meets this guy, Jean-Claude, and his daughter, Emily. Mom has died a while ago. Emily is very sick and likely going to die. So Natalie wants to do everything she can to try and help this family and make sure Emily's okay and taken care of. Ends up getting to the point where she's like, hey, if I seduce the president more, maybe I can convince him to do some stuff to support, like, because Jean-Claude's poor. He works as a teacher for free for students that can't afford it in areas that they don't really care about the kids anymore. And so she's like, I could probably do some good and convince the president to do some stuff that would help support these kinds of families that have seriously ill children but don't have the funds to be able to actually help them the way they need. And so that goes on for a little bit. Jean-Claude feels in his soul like Emily is cheating on him, which is by far the most annoying part of this whole thing, is the fact that this guy is upset at the fact that she is in a relationship with another person. So Aries' kind friend convinces him, who is dressed up as a second priest, so that's kind of a dick of a priest. And this, when he's talking to the president and around the president, and he's like, hey, have her followed, have a detective follow her. They do that, and he kind of forgets as Natalie's getting into being with him, he kind of forgets about that whole thing until they decide they want to make like a huge campaign, a huge thing to show, hey, I support the families, these lower class families with sick kids, and invite families over there to help. Jean-Claude ends up being one of the families that he's invited. He doesn't know yet. That is the day that Aries' kind friend decides to give him the information about the person Natalie's been with. They're on live TV, and he realizes that Jean-Claude, the person that is in front of him for this fundraiser, is the person Natalie's cheating on him with. And so he gets into a fight. He attacks Jean-Claude. He attacks, like, and physically assaults both him and Natalie on live television, and gets to the point where he takes a gun, he shoots Jean-Claude, and the cameraman that's recording, he demands the cameraman turn off the camera. The cameraman refuses, so he shoots the cameraman. And that starts this whole world war. It starts the France part of this world war. Now, I know it sounds super interesting. It sounds really interesting. The issue is it's not well written, and this entire massive plot is squeezed in less than 100 pages. Like, there are genuinely some pages that are like half full, and that one page is the entire chapter. And so there's some problems that can rise from that because of this like short format. I don't get to know really any of the characters. All of them are they're less humans and more of a vessel for these things to happen to. And so even when you get into the stuff that's happening with Natalie, it's hard to really get into it because I barely know anything about her. She's barely developed as a human being, and she's just there because the plot needs her to be there in order for the things to happen. Another thing about that actually frustrated me when I was reading the book is that it seems like the author tries to undercut the fact that there is a rape in the book, because immediately after, where's the quote I put? Like, immediately after the act happened the first time, the author says, like, she just went through what amounts to a rape by the president of France. And it's like, no, that's exactly what it is. If you're going to put that in the story, then actually say, hey, that's what just happened. Because you have that, and then later going on, the only time they use rape is when it's like, oh, she's getting used to this happening. She doesn't really care about life anymore. Maybe she's going to embrace it. It's like trying to undercut the act that is happening, and that frustrated me like to no end. There were also some redundancies. I know for a fact this is probably something I do, like editing a book of mine. People, like, there's some words and some phrases that I just use as the most intense crutch. But this is why I also need to learn about it. So what I mean when I'm talking about like redundancies and stuff, if you actually wanted to see like everything I have to do about it, I'm planning on posting all of my notes on the books that I read on my Patreon account for those people. So if you wanted to see these notes and see the full extent of everything that I'm talking about, then go pop on over there. It'll be great. It'll be great. So, but when I'm talking about redundancies, what I mean is like you use like a very pretty, like interesting, non-common word. Like, for instance, if I said like a word or phrase, if I were to say the grass is greener on the other side, or not even like a mantra as much as God, what one of the specific ones they use in the book is where'd it go? There's more at stake than her daughter's feelings. And those types of phrases are really nice to add in. They can like they can adjust the impact of the statement being made, stuff like that. But the issue is when you use that kind of phrase or those like super pretty words. What's one of the words that they use? I'm just going through all of my notes. I didn't completely adjust this the way I should have. One of the words they use constantly is catalyst, which is that's not a common word people would use, and there are synonyms for that word. So if you have a phrase or a word like those, use them very sparingly. The issue is like in such a short book, they're used like every chapter, maybe every other chapter. And it gets to a point where it feels like you just don't know any other words or you don't know how to use a thesaurus. It's most frustrating when I see it either in like subsequent paragraphs or multiple times in the same paragraph. Like, guys, use a thesaurus. If you can't think of anything else, Google it. Like, join a writers group. I'm sure they know some other ways of saying things. Ask some people. It's just when you use it so much and you lean so heavily on it, it seems like you just like you have 5 phrases or 5 nice words that you know, and you just keep throwing them in there because that's all you know. And it seems almost a little novice to do something like that. That's why there were literally points in this book where I'm like taking notes and I'm just hitting myself against the head. Like, I swear to God, if I see this phrase one more time, why do you constantly keep saying there's more at stake than her feelings? Why you can say that in so many different ways. Like, another word for catalyst, like a trigger, a cause, an influence. Like, there's so many things that can be there for there's more at stake than her daughter's feelings. There's a big picture that she's not seeing. There's a big picture going on. It's so, I know my personal ones, the ones that I personally do would be probably like shrug. When my first draft of a book, everyone shrugs incessantly. Oh my God, there's that. I feel like I tend to like nod and shake head too much. And like I personally need to learn more action verbs. Because those are the things that I tend to read the most. There are times when I just have everyone starts off a phrase with okay. That can be a problem. There are apps you can use, like a Hemingway app, where it'll say like, hey, you have this many paragraphs that start with the same word, brah. You need to not do that. It's great. Okay, moving on. There was something specific. This is relatively specific to this book, or if you're doing a book that is in a foreign where it's in a foreign area, it's focused in a foreign area, but you don't want the whole book to be in that language. So there'd be times where, because we're under the impression, as far as I've seen, the president of France thinks that France is the greatest country in the world, thinks it's the strongest country in the world. I would bet money that someone like that would speak primarily, if not only, French whilst doing their work and working with other people of the French government. But there will be times where it's like, hey, everything is written in English, obviously, because it's a book in English. I am an English reader. I can't read French, so obviously the book is in English. But then you get to a point where you say like, je ne sais quoi, or there is a random phrase or a random word in French. The issue is, I understand why you would want to do that, because those are probably the only phrases or only words that the average viewer understands in French. But when you put it in the writing that way, it gives the impression that all of the other times they are actually speaking English, because they're not like these all the entirety of their dialogue is not following the same rules. So it gives the impression that this entire time everyone's been like talking in English, even though they're all working within the French government. They're all talking in English, and then we'll just randomly throw out a French phrase or two. I've never been to France. I could not tell you if people, like, how often people speak French and English in France. I could probably Google it, but not super necessary right now. It's not that big a deal right now. But I could tell you, based on the way that they're presented, being so arrogant, thinking that the French are the greatest people in the world, they would be speaking French. But the way you're presenting it is as if they're speaking English, but will occasionally throw out French. This is why I would in general, just, if you're going to have the whole thing in English, even though they're supposed to be in a different language, if in a different area where they wouldn't speak English, I would just keep everything in English, because it just continuity. It messes with the continuity when you try to change things around like that. Cool. Next. So many things. Oh, another thing along with redundancy that goes along with this idea of redundancy is there would be times where, like, keep in mind, again, this book is less than 100 pages, but I would get like 10 to 12 speeches of this main character, Aries' kind friends. I would get 10 to 12 speeches of his explaining why he's doing the things he's doing and how humans are terrible. He hates them. He wants them to die. But I could summarize that in like a sentence. One speech, I guess, sure. I do not need it repeated that many times. I got it the first time. Maybe if you wanted to have like a quick thing towards the end or in the middle or something like that. But to have so many intense speeches where you're just repeating the same information that the reader already has gets so frustrating. Like, there are times, because I'm just sitting here and I'm reading it, and it's a full chapter of just a speech, but none of it is new information. So I don't understand why I had to read it. It's not interesting. It's not fun. It's not well written. I couldn't handle that. It was frustrating. I know, we'll get to that in a second. Never mind. Hold on. I think the last major point that I have was the fact that, so in the book, when they're trying to describe the physical attributes of Aries' kind friend, they do not actually describe him at all. What I mean by that is they say, oh, when I look in the mirror, I see that same hair, that same skin tone, that same like facial structure. Like, this is genuinely what they say. I wrote down so many quotes. It's when I see the same characteristics as skin color, height, weight, hair, etc. They literally put etc. in the text. This is along an idea that I've actually seen out of a decent number of writers, not like super intense professional writers, like people I've beta read for, where what they want to do is they want to make sure the main character, is as nondescript as possible. They want it to be as non-specific as humanly possible, so a reader can insert themselves into that plot easily. And I think that is very misguided information. I understand what you're going for, but like, I think you're confusing. You're wanting the reader to empathize with the character. I think you're confusing that idea with essentially just making it like a second person, maybe like choose your own adventure kind of story. because you empathize with other people. You don't empathize with yourself. You feel things for yourself, but you empathize with other people. So when you see a character, you relate to what they're going through, but you don't personally have to feel like, hey, this thing is happening to me, even if it has happened before. You don't necessarily need to have the book say this, you're going through this right now. If that, like, for instance, in a book, like if I was reading The Bell Jar, which, like, I read Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, or Miss Briggs, do not remember who wrote that. And there'd just be points where the author is talking about, like, how isolated from society they feel, how disassociated they feel from the world. I related to that. I genuinely related so intensely that I did not realize that that was an issue with the mental health. I thought that was genuinely just how life was, and I thought they were just describing how life was. I didn't think that I was the I didn't need to put myself in the place of the character that was feeding birds out in England. I did not need to put myself into the place of the, like, 1800s, 1900s, 1800s. I don't know. Like the old of the woman, maybe centuries ago, probably closer to decades ago, that has been put inside of a mental hospital because she's just casually wants to commit suicide. Like, I don't need to put myself into those places. I do not need to be the character that is being written about, but I can see that character and I can feel the human connection with that character. And I think when you don't have a full character developed, it can make it harder, in fact, for a person to relate, because there isn't that human person there. You know you're not in the book, but there isn't a full-fledged human being presented to you. And so it makes it harder to kind of actually associate emotionally and empathetically with that character that's being shown. Because this is an issue I came up with several times. I had someone I was beta reading, and I was like, and they asked me, can you imagine who these characters are? And I was like, oh, not at all. It was like, well, we wanted to make sure that they were, like, full, that they were able to be seen, but you could still, like, put yourself in those places. And for me, it's just, because I didn't know who these characters were at all, it was hard for me to get into the things that were happening to them, and it was hard for me to really keep track of what they were doing. Honestly, you change point of view once, and I'm like, wait, who was the tall one? Someone was tall in this? It makes it more confusing to keep track of the characters if you don't fully fledge out your characters. So yeah, that's been this hoot and a half of a writing session, kind of. Next time, we're working on that. That's the thing I'm figuring out. I'll probably, if I want to do a writing class, it would be a live stream. So look out for that. The other thing I did want to mention was, because I know in some of the comments, a lot of people were like, oh my God, this makes me look at the world in a new way. Humans are terrible. I think that this is definitely not a new idea to me, if that makes sense. Like, I've seen the idea of if I look in the news, I see the idea that human beings are actually terrible human beings, and we destroy everything. The world is going to collapse in on itself because we are just taking everything the earth has to give. Literally, the Amazon forest was on fire for weeks at a time, and no one cared. That's how terrible people are. So I'm not, like, it's not a new idea that humans are terrible, but I did find it interesting, the idea that because we are so terrible. You wanted to start a war and have us just kill ourselves off so that Mother Nature can be all chill. If you had taken out the Mother Nature thing, that is Ares, god of war. He's like, I don't care about humans. Let's start a fight and kill them all. But the nature thing makes it a little bit more interesting. It's been fun. It was a nice idea. I did like the tone of the book, but again, it was just not well written at all. If you do want to end up seeing, I am going to post like a full Amazon review that's going to be up tonight on Patreon. I will put, and then I'll submit it like this weekend to actual Amazon to go with the book. So that's going to be there. Next book that I'm reading, I'm currently reading a book called Optimizing America by Jarl Jensen. But do look out. That stream is going to be on the 30th. There's going to be a super special bonus stream on the 31st. That's going to be a lot of fun because I felt like I need to do something for Halloween. It's kind of a Halloween book. It's a scary book. I have a cat now. It's a scary book. It scared me. It scared me ever since I was a child, and I've kept it since childhood. And now I'm going to read it for my first spoopy stream. Ain't that right, Coco? Coco knows I'm right. Anything else? What else do the people need to know? Coco. If you want to actually read some of my writing, I Hear Colors and The Color Black are both available on Amazon.com. I can put links down below. Stop scratching me. What are you doing? She's slipping. That's why she's freaking out. Anything else? Tell the people what they need to know. Hi, I'm Coco. I'm playing with her face. But that's basically all I had to say about this book in particular. Again, I did not like it. I would not recommend anyone ever read it. But I'm glad we got to talk about the lessons to be learned from it. And that's all that matters. But until next time, do it with me, Coco. Valedictions, friends.